All right, good evening. Thank you so much for showing up tonight to Mastering the Move. We're going to be talking about how to buy that second home and actually how to make the most out of it. It's going to be a pretty exciting and interesting time. I'm going to share several stories about how people have done that, and certainly hope that you'll find some value in this as we're going through the process of helping you understand whether this is the right thing for you to do or what you want to do with it. So, welcome tonight. Thank you so much for the opportunity to do this. As we get started, I just kind of really want to get into today's agenda. It's really simple. We're going to be talking about the 7 steps to paradise and how to get there. And then also we're going to have a market update towards the end and what is happening currently in the real estate market and kind of give everybody a really good perspective, whether you're watching live or you're on the recorded one later, what's happening currently in the market. But before we start and go too far down this, I do have to ask a question. Which one makes the most sense to you? Are you looking for the beach home? Are you looking for the mountains? Are you looking for the lake home? Or are you looking to be near family? Those are most typically the ones that we see. We see people kind of picking a second home somewhere in that nature, and that's really the nature of a second home is something where you can go and get away from. But there's a lot of them that, yeah, they're going to feel like home, but maybe they have a secondary purpose on top of that. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that here in a few minutes. There is another opportunity that we see with this as well, and that is many times we actually see that people buy a second home in a place where they're working because maybe they want to live in paradise and have like a condo or something else like that where they're going to be working. So they'll come there during the week and they'll commute back to paradise on the weekends. Those are all opportunities for people to kind of consider. But as we get into this conversation and we start talking about defining the dream, I want us to take a little bit of a second here and just, back up. When you get to a certain point in life, where are your grandchildren running around? What does a porch smell like? Are you listening to the waves? Do you hear crickets? Who's sitting around the fire with you? Yeah, today isn't entirely about buying a second home, even though that's really the topic is about the second home. It's really about deciding where you're going to be making your family's memories and trying to help you make the very first step to help you visualize where you need to go and where you see yourself, whether it's the beach or the lake or the mountains or a winter escape or some form of a summer enjoyment. All of this is really meant to help you create memories and to generate maybe even some income. Yeah, the emotions matter. It's all about the lifestyle. Once you know what your dream is, we can help reverse the engineer the strategy to get there. Sometimes it's about that vacation getaway. Sometimes it's about a retreat for family, or maybe it's an investment property that's going to turn into that. We're going to talk a little bit about those methods and those different types. But it also could be your future retirement home. We have people doing that now where they're buying homes on lakes. They're using them to as a second home, and then they're turning around and renting them out when they need to. And then later they turn it into their primary. Those are all possibilities of what we can do. Even the work flexibility works. All that can really help, and just depending on where you want to be. Like my family is very distant from me. I have family in New Hampshire. I have family in Spain. And I've considered many times buying a flat or a small apartment in Spain, just so I have a place to land. That would be super nice and super cool. And we're going to talk about that a little bit about how to define what your dream is and help you kind of decide which way makes the most sense for you to move forward and to buy this dream home. Now, coming with this, this is where we start getting into some of these bigger questions, right? Can I truly afford this? I mean, that's how it comes down. You have to kind of figure out how to pay for it. Do I have enough for a down payment? Well, 10% is the most common. You can do 20% or more. Terms definitely improve. Another question is, can I comfortably handle 2 mortgages at the same time if your home's not necessarily paid off? What are the ongoing costs that I need to be considering, whether it's insurances or maintenance or HOAs? How is this going to affect my other abilities to save towards other goals, like maybe retirement or kids' college? All sorts of questions like that. And there are pieces that you really need to be looking at carefully as you put this together. Like, for example, am I going to eliminate my cushion by buying this home? That's a big question. You need to be able to create a cushion, eliminate debt, create liquidity, and conserve it and eliminate it. And if you don't have enough cash to pay it, that's a tough one. A lot of people stop here because they think I just simply don't know how to do it when it's really not a matter of being able to do it many times. It's a matter of having the right strategy to help you get set up. A lot of people come to me and say, my house isn't paid off. I don't make enough. I'm too old. I'll wait until retirement. Every family that I talk to that I'm going to talk about tonight started with one of these thoughts. And every single one of these stories is really proof that it can be done if you're looking to do something like this. And so I'm going to dive in real quick and talk, first of all, about Jason and Allison and their mountain retreat. It's kind of crazy. They wanted to buy this really cool house that they found, and their dream home was something super important to them. And they really wanted to figure out how they were going to do that. And yes, it was such a big deal to them to figure out how they were going to go about, financing this dream and how they're going to actually make this work. They came to me having just bought their dream home. I helped them the year before buy their dream home. Now, the crazy thing with it is they just found this beautiful little piece of land up in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And it was perfect. It had like 10, 12 acres attached to it. It was a house with a nice little, I don't know what you call it, whether it was a storage unit or whether it was um, a shop or something like that. It was fantastic little setup, and it was really beautifully laid out. There was a pond out in front, and as you were sitting on the porch, you could actually look out over top of the trees, and you could see down into the valley below. It was absolutely stunning. But they had just bought their dream home. They had put all their money into this dream home, but they could see it. They could see it and they could taste it. In fact, what they saw with this home was a whole lot more than just a house and a place for them, because that shop that they were looking at was set up to where it actually could be a venue. It could be a venue for them to rent it out and for them to be able to find a way to create some income off of this second home. And so what did they do? They came to me and said, "Hey, Chris, we need to figure this out. This house up here is amazing. It really is set up well. It's set up on a 10 to 12 acre parcel. It's out in a little ways from town. It's on a dead end street. It looks amazing. This is how we plan on using it. Long term, this is what we're going to do." And so we started talking through it. We looked into their situation. We found that they didn't have a whole lot of cash on hand, but they did have some opportunity to pull some money from like a 401k. Or maybe with a second home, you can even crowdsource or get gifts from family. And so in their case, they did a little bit of horse trading with family. They got a little bit of money from them. They got a little bit of money from their 401k. They had some liquidity that they were able to bring to the table, and they were able to come up with enough for 10% down. And this was the bare minimum that they needed to be able to get in. And it was perfect. They created liquidity, they got the gift, they depleted some assets that they had, and they were able to find a way to put 10% down on this home. Now, if we fast forward and we get into that, now they use a traditional loan, which is by Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, where you put 10% down. You still have mortgage insurance, but still, it's 10% down. Minimum, that's a really good, easy way to get into this house. And what they did was is they put it down, they found a way to cover the closing costs, and they got into the house. Fast forward now, this home, when you're buying a home as a second home, you have to maintain possession for the first 12 months. Now, that doesn't mean you can't rent it out. It just means it can't be a 100% rental. And I had shared that with Jason and Allison. And so what do they decide to do? Okay, well, we're going to do the occasional retreat while we're waiting, while we're doing this. And we're also going to spend some time going through this storage shed, not shed, but more of a shop. And we're going to go ahead and start redoing the shop to create this venue that we're hoping to do. Now, a year and a half later, they had gotten the house redone. And so they started renting it out on a weekly basis. They would Airbnb it, beautiful setting, great Airbnb, fantastic. They started to create some cash flow with it. Now, what they did is they took that cash flow and they reinvested it into um, into this big pavilion that they had out there and they converted it into a venue. And it's a beautiful venue now to where they can host weddings, they can host receptions, they can host business retreats, they can all sorts of events. They've even had concerts in there. It's so big. And it's turned into a fantastic way to help them get this done. Now, when we started with it, it was a little challenging because we had to pull 10%. But with a second home, you can actually pull it from a variety of different sources. Now, when you're buying it truly as a second home, you have to be able to support whatever payments you have currently, the payment for your current home and the payment for the second home without including any cash flow that might be coming in. So that is a challenge with a second home. You can, after the first 12 months, you can consider to rent it commercially if you would like to. But during the first 12 months, you have to maintain possession, which means that it's primarily yours. You might lease it out one weekend here or there, but really it's primarily yours. Now, there are other ways beyond traditional to be able to get into these homes, and you can actually get a second home, with some form of what is called a non-traditional lending. Now, those types of non-traditional lending, they usually will require a little bit more money down. So they're going to require 20%, but they might be a little bit more flexible in other areas. And so, for example, they might be flexible in how they perceive the use of the home. Yes, it's going to be a second home, but they might let you use a little bit more of the rental income to help that get done. One of those that's actually very good is what's called a debt service coverage ratio loan, or a DSCR. And we use that quite a bit. In fact, they actually have a program with these DSCRs where you can actually use the projected rent from an Airbnb or a VRBO to help you qualify for this type of purchase. And they'll use a bank statement loan, a profit loss loan. There's several other types of loans that you can use to buy it with one of these setups. And that is actually a perfect way to help you get into something like this, a second home. Whether you're going to full-time rent it out or you're not going to rent it out, it's really going to depend. Now, the true classification of a second home is to maintain possession and control of it and limited rental. So you have to be able to afford both homes simultaneously. Some of the more investment related ones will allow you a little bit more flexibility when it comes to that. Now, how the home is going to be used, this plays into how the home is going to be used because that plays a huge role. And I'm going to tell you a story now about Michael and Allison. Yeah, another Allison, but Michael and Allison who bought an Outer Banks home. Yeah, fantastic. They actually wanted to buy an Outer Banks home so that they could use it periodically for their family, but they wanted to buy the one right on the beach. And those buggers are expensive. I mean, right on the beach, you're dropping a fair amount of money on something like that. So, what they had to do in this case is, even though it was going to be a second home for them, they had to go through the process of creating this like more of an investment style loan. Now that works perfectly. The DSCR would have been a good candidate for them because they could use the projected rents to help offset it. Now in their case, and Jason and Michael and Allison, not Jason and Allison, in Michael and Allison's way, what ended up happening was is that they had a rental home that they had just sold. They did a 1031 exchange, which was beautiful for them. They took the proceeds without having to pay capital gains. They took the proceeds from this rental and they went and applied it onto the beachfront home that they were getting ready to buy. And they were able to classify this as a investment home for the purposes, even though it was going to be a second home, because they needed to be able to use, I mean, a home that expensive, they needed to be able to use a projected income that was going to come in from this Outer Banks home in order to be able to help them get into this monster Outer Banks home. And so what we were able to do was go in, take the money from the 1031-K, apply it to the purchase of this home, and then we were able to go along with it and look and see what the projected rental income was going to be. Now, the great thing about it is that we're going to talk a little bit more about management later, but it was very easy to manage this situation, even though they were going to live in another part of the state. And so it really didn't necessarily work against them. It is slightly more expensive to buy it as an investment home, But the great thing is the projected rent is used to offset the payment. And that really was the clincher for them and helping them get it set up. Now, with a true second home, you got to remember, because they do audit these things, and that's why AI is so friendly to them right now, is AI is doing a lot of the auditing. True second home, you've got to maintain possession for the first 12 months. If you're doing an investment home, you can do whatever the heck you want when it comes to that. There is more flexibility, and immediately you can rent, and we can even use a projected rental when we get there. Now, the rental strategy, there is a reality that you do have to face with this. And that is that you do have to learn that if you're going to be using it along those lines, you need to know how to manage the tenants. And that can be challenging. I've had a few tenants in the past that may the Lord bless them and keep them, and may their families love upon them, but they destroyed my house. Okay, so you need to be very careful with how you do this, but you need to find out a way to do tenant management. Now, in the situation with Michael and Allison, the Outer Banks has a very robust system to where they can manage the rentals for you, including the sheets. Everything is all set up there. But if you're going to be doing an Airbnb, which is different, now you're not necessarily into second homes at that point. You're more into hospitality, and that's not necessarily a passive income at that point. Whereas so on and so forth. So you need to really think through how you're going to be setting that up, especially if you live several hours away from the property. And, I've had personally major issues with tenants damaging some homes. I've had clients that have had the same problem. And sometimes guests treat this vacation home as if it's a hotel with no emotional toil at all, and they will destroy things. So you have to think about who is going to help you with that, because if you buy it as an investment or you're planning on renting it out, you need to make sure that you know who's going to screen your tenants, what happens if something breaks after 10 p.m., how are you going to handle the cleaning, the repairs, the turnovers, different things like that. These are all important pieces. And even if you still have a property manager doing this, you're going to still be responsible for making sure that the insurance claims are handled, the disputes are handled with the tenants. And then, you also have to think about this as well, as if you don't, you're not able to rent it out for the full time, how are you going to be able to cover those payments? And so those are big pieces that we look at when we're actually doing the qualifying. So when we're looking at the qualification of a home and we're looking at helping you buy a home, whether it's as a second home or we're structuring it as an investment home that you're going to use periodically as a second home, we're going to be looking at a vacancy factor in there to try to figure it out and make sure that we're safeguarding you from getting into a very difficult spot in buying this home. You really need to be planning a 25 to 30% vacancy factor. If you're buying this home, like the Outer Banks home that Michael and Allison bought, those homes, the vast majority of the money in those homes is made during this summer season. And so that means you may not necessarily get to use that home during the summer season, but in their case, they made enough in the 12 weeks of summer to pay for the mortgage for the entire year. And so it was a really good win for them, and they got to enjoy the home the rest of the year. Maybe had to do a few extra repairs with it, but they got to enjoy the rest of the home the rest of the year for the most part, rented it out occasionally after the main season was over. But they were able to do that and be able to take care of it very, very nicely. Now, as you're, oops, went too far. Um, Managing tenants. Okay, so that matters. And so when you're managing the tenants, we talked about that. Okay, so now when you're getting into understanding the buying into paradise, you need to probably understand how you're going to set this up for tax structure and for impact and for other things like that. So, for example, I have a second home. My second home is in Florida. It's fantastic. I can walk to the beach. It's literally, I can throw a football 2 or 3 times and hit the water. It's just maybe now I'm in my 50s, probably 3 times, but that's okay. You get the idea. But it's a good idea to understand the implications of how this is going to work tax wise, because an investment home is going to be structured very differently than a second home. And you need to understand what that really does get set up for. Understand the depreciation and the capital gains. And I'll just kind of throw it out there so you can kind of see what I mean by this. In my case, I've chosen not to put the home into an LLC. A lot of people are going to want to put it into an LLC because it protects them should a tenant do something. The maximum exposure is the house. In my case, it's just purely a second home. I didn't put it in an LLC. Now, having said that, you kind of need to think through it because long term, there are taxable differences between them. One is an estate style and the other one's a capital gain style. And so if I keep the property for the long term, I pass it on to my heirs. Once I'm done and I pass away and I give it to my heirs, they get what's called the step up basis. So let's just say I bought it for 400,000 and they inherit it at 600,000. They're not paying $200,000 of capital gains. They literally inherited at the 600,000. They pay no taxes. That's beautiful. Now, that doesn't work that way if you put it into an LLC. And so that's why you have to kind of have these understandings as far as LLC, trust, different things like that. Understand which structure works best for you. And this is where having a good tax provider can be your best friend. And yes, they are expensive, but it is certainly worth having that there. And in knowing how to write it off, because you can't necessarily write off a second home the same way you can an investment home. Investment home, I have an investment home as well. You can write those off, you can depreciate them, you can do all sorts of things. I can't do that on my second home. So you kind of have to think through which one makes the most sense for the short term or the long term. And are you trying to pass it down to family, or are you going to really truly use this as an investment home? In which case, then using it as an investment home, it might be worth your time to set up an LLC to manage it just from the legality aspect and also from the protection aspect. That's certainly something that you can decide and play through. Now, when you're looking at enjoying paradise, you really need to be looking at this for the long term. And when I say for the long term, I mean when you're buying this house, you need to be looking for the long term. This is not a quick in and out, because if you do a quick in and out, you're going to lose money on this house. It's just that's kind of the way it is. All real estate is long term. And so if you're getting into a property, and especially into a second home, you need to be looking at this as a long game. Understand what your maintenance is going to be. If you're going to live near the beach, is you're going to have the salt there? Is that going to corrode the nails that hold the siding on? Are you going to have to put new siding on? What does that do for the hinges? What does that do for any metal parts? Those are all big pieces. I know the Florida house, it is amazing. I never thought that salt air could do what it does. I get rust inside the garage. It's completely shut off. So these are big pieces that you need to kind of think through as you're doing this. And if you're creating it as a legacy home, that's another big thing that you need to think about. And keep your pulse on the market just in case you do need either a refinance or an exit strategy. Don't just plan the purchase, plan the ownership. You got to look long term, because the goal is never the mortgage. It's not the mortgage. The goal is the lifestyle that happens afterwards. And the lifestyle that happens afterwards needs to have contingency plans in it. And this contingency plan needs to be about not only buying, but how long am I going to keep it? Is this going to be until the kids are in college? Is this going to be until I retire? Are they going to bury me by the tree in the backyard? What is it that we're going to be doing with this house? That plays a huge role, a massive role, and you need to keep that in mind as you're thinking about it, because the maintenance plays a big role. Like down at the beach where my home is in Florida, roof, a 30-year shingle only lasts 15 years because of the heat, because of the humidity, and because of the salt air. I didn't know that until I bought the home. Guess what? I'm 5 years away on a 30-year roof from having to replace it. I need to plan that, because that's a $10,000 expense down there. That's a big deal. It's the same thing that you have to plan if you're going to be buying in the Outer Banks, if you're going to be buying up in the Blue Ridge, like Jason and Allison do. You need to be looking at this. Now, if you're using this long-term like Jason and Allison, or maybe Michael and Allison, guess what? There needs to be a legacy plan with it, because what are you going to do with it? Are you going to pass it on, or are you going to liquidate it right before? Now, my parents also have multiple properties, and my mom, in this case, is actually taking these properties and she is creating independence. My dad passed away last fall. My mom still lives. She lives 100% independently because of the cash flow of these properties. And that's a big deal. Understanding what it is to help you get set up, that helps you understand what the long game is with this. And I'll tell you this, the full story. Growing up, we were very blue collar. That's a great way of saying poor. Then didn't even have a bed until I was like 6. It was like a big deal to get a bed. It's still a big deal to understand cash flow. We understood back then that we didn't understand it. and the banks didn't understand us. And so we were just simply not working well. We got into a lot of trouble. We had a lot of financing problems. We got into debt. That's fine. Okay. We found a way to dig out. We found a way to create some liquidity. We found a way to pay off the first house and go buy another one. That's what my parents did. And then they paid off and they went and bought some more property. My mom is living 100% independently because of the cash flow. Still very blue collar, but that's how we're doing it. And it can work for you too. These are some of the steps to do that. So when you're looking forward to doing this, you need to understand in the long term, well, how does this house play into it? Is it, I wouldn't necessarily buy anything for a 1 to 2 year plan because you're just simply not going to make any return on it. But if you're looking for something where you can get a return long term and at least 10 years, that's a good idea to start getting yourself set up. Now, when you're getting ready to do this, you need to consider the negotiation aspect of buying one of these homes. These homes can be very emotionally charged because you're looking and you can hear the crickets. You can see the fire and the s'mores, and you can see the views out of the porch, and you can see the beach, and you can feel the toes in the sand, and maybe the volleyball in the pool. There's all sorts of things that you can see when it comes to these things. In the case of Jason and Allison, they saw this home and I counseled them. I said, look, don't fall in love with this until you have the keys because it eliminates your ability to negotiate. And so what they did is it helped them and they were able to get a reduced price because of how they handled it emotionally. Okay. So until it's yours, don't get attached. Don't move in quite yet. Now, be strategic. Look at this beyond price and completely avoid emotional interactions. Now, if you're going to be doing, I have some people who are doing for sale by owners. You certainly can do that. I'm going to show you a website that may help you when it comes to that. It's a home app. Contracts.app. You can actually, I'm going to bring that in. If you're going to do it for sale by owner, I would bookmark this right away right here. This is a fantastic website to help you get set up for sale by owners. It'll walk you through the entire thing if you're going straight to the owner. It's drafted by lawyers. The whole thing is very well set up. I would highly encourage you, if you're doing for sale by owners, that you get set up with something like this to help you with a contract. It'll help you negotiate. It even gives you some tips in the background on how to negotiate it. I also have a white pages on how to negotiate. Happy to share that with you and get you set up with that as well if you're going for sale by owner. Now, if you're not and you want to go with a real estate agent, they're really good, but you got to get a really good negotiator, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. When you're being strategic about your negotiations, make sure that you're looking for the win-win. In other words, how can the seller win, but at the same point in time, how can I win? What are some things that might be really important to the seller? Maybe it's you do some of the repairs. Maybe it's, I don't know. I don't know what it is, but kind of understand what it is that you're trying to get. And a great realtor will help you understand what you need to do to create that win-win. If you're going to be negotiating by yourself and using that website that I just shared with you, you need to make sure that you go in and understand what the buttons are that will make this a win-win. Then define the win, define what breaks it in advance, and be willing to walk away when you get to that breaking point. Okay, because that's just the way it is. If it gets to be a win-lose situation, there's no sense in staying in it. Talk about the closing cost. Understand what the closing dates are. Understand the earnest money deposits. If you're buying somewhere out in the woods, understand how the utilities are working. Is it solar? Are you getting well and septic, or are you on city water and sewer? Are you going to do a home inspection? Is there going to be a home warranty that comes with this? All of this stuff plays a key role in helping making sure that you get it done. The aesthetics are great, but that's really not the important part. You really need to look at the structure and make sure you can always repaint. And like what we saw with Jason and Allison when they bought this house up in the Blue Ridge that had this most amazing view. I'm going to tell you that the house needed a little love. It needed a little love, and they were able to find a way to, because the seller's pretty attached. He'd lived there. It was his home. But they found a way to massage the deal to a way to where it was listed here. They were able to get it down because they didn't fall in love, because they understood what the keys were and what they could fix themselves and what they planned on fixing themselves anyway. So understanding that. Now, when you get in there, understand what the value is appraisal is going to be making that level. So understanding that that appraisal when it comes in, if it's overpriced, the appraisal is going to correct that. But unless you decide that you're going to pay the difference, you have three options when that appraisal comes in. Option one is to renegotiate with the seller. Option two is to pay the difference. And option three is to cancel the deal and walk away. You can pick any one you want, but get into the negotiation with an open mind and make sure that you're looking at it very clearly to help yourself get set up for success with this. And I have several places where you can go for resources. This is one of them right here. You can hit this QR code, it'll take you to my website. And on the website, you can go to a place on the resources tab. And on that resources tab, there's some free downloads that you can take on how to buy a home. Now, if you're looking for the white pages on negotiations, white pages on home inspections, I have those. You just have to message me later and I'll make sure and get that to you so that you're all set up. Now, this is important because now that you've got the keys, you need to make sure that you're able to do this. Now you can move in. Now you can emotionally move into the home. And now you can start making memories. Let me tell you what, those s'mores will taste amazing once you have the keys. But it's a good idea as well to spend a little bit of time understanding who in the area might be able to help you should something need a little maintenance. If you have a list of tradesmen, maybe even a lawnmower, those are all pieces that you might need to make sure that you're getting straight with it. And it's amazing what you can figure out on YouTube these days. Now, as far as the market update, there are quite a few things that are happening in the market that you need to look at. Yes, you are. If you decide you want to go forth a realtor, you do have to pay separately for them. But many times what we're seeing is that you contract and agree to pay with them separately. But many times we're seeing the seller is actually covering the real estate expenses. So that may not necessarily be a bad thing. Now, what you need to know is if you do hire a realtor, what you're hiring them for is not necessarily to find the house. You can find a lot of that stuff on Zillow and on Realtor.com. They may be able to find you something that's not on there, but for the most part, what you're really paying a realtor for is to negotiate on your behalf. If you can out negotiate them on their commission, you probably need a different realtor just because that's what they're earning. They're earning their commission and they're doing it by negotiating. And so understanding what it is that's going on is going to be extremely important when it comes to this. Now, if you go into interest rates, that's a pretty big deal. Every area is very different when it comes to interest rate, not interest rates, but inventory. But interest rates, let's do that first. I just kind of had a mental block. Interest rates right there, those are moving around. Right now, we're seeing the whole situation in the Mideast is actually causing a little bit of complication when it comes to interest rates. And we're seeing those kind of going crazy based off of what's happening with inflation. It literally looks like lightning. It's going up one minute, going down the next. It's jagged all over the place. It's going sideways, and it's moving every 6 to 8 minutes. Every time somebody from the Fed speaks, or every time a missile is shot, the entire thing just goes crazy. We've seen it as high as in the last 30 days. I've seen it as high as 7.5, and I've seen it as low as 6.25. It's impossible to predict. When you're looking at second homes, you need to be looking for the opportunity, not necessarily the interest rate. You can always improve the interest rate, but you can't always find the opportunity. Like Jason and Allison, they found this amazing home. If they'd have waited, somebody else would have gotten it. Like Michael and Allison, they found this beautiful home on the Outer Banks. If they'd have waited, they would have lost it. And so they have to consider the opportunity. If the opportunity is right and the numbers work, it's probably a good idea to go ahead and do it because you can always better the numbers later. And especially if you start creating cash flow, it really will make those numbers seem a lot sweeter. Okay. Now, when it comes to inventory, every area is a little different. There are certain seasons that are very heavy when it comes to inventory. For example, one of the heaviest seasons in Florida is typically December through March. It's not the same in Virginia. Virginia is March through June. Indiana, it's a little bit more spread out. Tennessee, it's a little bit more spread out. It's different in every single state. And so you have to look at that and also every location. The ones that you're seeing the most activity on that are going to be second home, like the Outer Banks, or Florida, you're going to see them at different times than you would if you're trying to go up into the Blue Ridge. And so kind of keep that in mind that inventory does shift and it does move from time to time. And really, this is a really big piece to understand when it comes to this, because the owner occupant homes that you're going to be finding when it comes to owner occupant, or in other words, you're going to be buying and living yourself in the city area, there's a lot more competition than sometimes what you're going to find out on the beach area, because that one's heavily seasonal when people are really paying attention to it. Okay. Now, I have a lot more, and this specifically right here is going to end up on YouTube. So you're more than welcome to join me in the conversation. You can hit that QR code. That'll take you to my YouTube channel where this will be posted later tonight. And you'll get a chance to review it if you'd like to and share it with others who might find a similar interest in this. Now, why do I do this? I work very differently than a lot of people. A lot of my counterparts in mortgages, they buy leads, they pay for partnerships, they cold call. You might have even gotten a cold call from one of them. I choose to do something different. I want to provide you with value because I think the transformation is in what we do for you. The transformation is what life we create for you. The life that we created for Jason and Allison, that's tremendous. No one else was willing to tackle that. We were able to put a strategy together, execute for them, and it's transformed the entire direction of their lives. Because not only did they get their dream home, but the year afterwards, they got a fantastic mountain home, which now is turned into a venue that's cash flowing for them on a very high level. Michael and Allison, the same thing. We were able to find a way to help them get that Outer Banks home, which is cash flowing tremendously. And they're actually making more money in the 12 weeks of summer and the few weeks that go after that to not only pay for the house, but actually create some cash flow for themselves and a legacy for themselves. These are all parts of the pieces that we're trying to do. And we're devoting ourselves. I devote myself to my clients before, during, and after each transaction to make sure that I'm helping you get set up for true success. Kind of like some of the stories I shared with tonight. And because the real thing is I want to make sure that we transform and help you transform your family for years to come, because this is generational. This is generational wealth. And it starts with a simple phone call and a simple strategy. Love to have a chance to talk to you and share a little bit more about it. And literally, that's it. That's it tonight. Love the opportunity to connect with you. All my contact information is right here on the screen. That right there will take you to my website. You're more than welcome to join in the conversation on YouTube or come to my website, schedule a time with me right there, and we can get you set up for a success from there. Thank you so much for joining me tonight for this. I'm going to stop the recording right now. And if you have any additional questions after this, I'd be more than happy to keep going when it comes to that.